Hello everyone. This is part 3 of the presentation made on the topic P2P networks. So we already seen an introduction to P2P and the typical architecture that is followed in a P2P network for forwarding the queries and locating resources. So we already seen how this centralized directory service architecture is working, and also how the query flooding architecture is working. And now we are going to see the third way of communication in a typical P2P network, that is by exploiting heterogeneity. This P2P architecture makes use of both the previous discussed system, that is centralized directory server architecture, as well as the query flooding architecture. It's a kind of mix of both. It resembles a distributed system like Nutella. In Nutella we are following that query flooding architecture, right? Because there is no concept of central server, particularly central directory server for query processing. But unlike Nutella, it does not treat all its peers equally. If you are looking at Nutella, that based on that pure query flooding, there is no distinction among the machines. Everyone is equally treated. But when it comes to exploiting heterogeneity, the term itself suggests that we are exploiting that hierarchical, that heterogeneity. That means differences among machines. So here the peers with the higher bandwidth and network connectivity are at a higher priority, and we and are called as the group leaders or the super nodes. So we are exploiting that heterogeneity by making those machines with a higher bandwidth and network connectivity. It is designated as the group leaders or super nodes and are given some special privileges. So the rest of the peers are assigned to these super nodes. So under a given super node, say n number of peers will be assigned. And these super nodes are interconnected, and the peers under these super nodes inform their respective leaders about their connectivity, IP addresses, and the files available for sharing. Just listen, in the case of that centralized directory server architecture, every peer is communicating its IP address, the available resources, everything to the centralized directory. But a similar concept is here also, but instead that depending on a centralized server machine for that, here we are depending on the super nodes, and there will be a number of super nodes also. So all the peers which are connected to a given super node are supposed to inform their IP address, their network, their connectivity information, their what are all the resources or the files available on them, everything to the super node on which those peers are assigned. Okay, so it's something like this. So here we have super node 1, 2, 3 and 4, and with each super node it's a typical example. Some set of clients are assigned, like here 3, 3, 3. Okay, now all these clients which are connected to a given super node will be communicating their information, including IP address, the files available, everything to the super node. So now all these super nodes are having information about the machines which are connected to them. Now together how they are working, that we will see. And here we can see two approaches by which this communication is happening in a typical network using this exploiting heterogeneity concept. So approach 1, here the supernodes could contact other supernodes and merge their databases with its own database, and this supernode now has information of a large number of peers. See what is happening. All the supernodes are having information about the peers connected to them, or we can call them as clients, some kind of a client server kind of organization you can see here. And now suppose a particular peer here, this particular machine want some resource. It may be available maybe with this particular machine. So how that information is getting updated, or how this particular machine is going to communicate with this one. Okay, so the idea is this particular supernode is having information about all the peers which are connected to it only, but not about others. So now what this machine can do is, the every supernode, not only this, in this example all the 4 supernodes will try to merge the database information from other supernodes into its own database information. Together, it is having an information about the entire network. That means in this example, the supernode 1 will be collecting the database from supernode 2, supernode 3 and supernode 4, and it will merge all these database with its own database. And finally, it is having now a bigger database containing information about entire system, including all the peers assigned to all the supernodes. Okay, so here the supernodes could contact other supernodes. So to merge the database, they will be contacting others and merge their database with its own database. This supernode now has information of a large number of peers. So now it is straightforward. So it is more or less like the centralized directory server architecture. But instead, in that case, we are having a single centralized server. But here, every supernode is getting updated with the information about the entire one. So a kind of robustness we can expect here compared to the purely pure centralized scheme. Okay. Now another approach is whenever a query is coming, so in the second approach, the supernodes are not going to merge database of other supernodes. Instead, everybody is having information about the peers connected to them only. Now, whenever a query is coming to a particular supernode, it is forwarded to its neighboring supernodes. First, it will try whether it can suppose this machine is sending a query message to the supernode asking for a resource. Suppose that resource is available in other peers which are connected to the supernode, immediately it will reply. Otherwise, that means if it is not able to locate that particular resource, that request will be forwarded to all the neighbors. Now it's like the query flooding. Okay. Now, if any of these neighbors are having information about the resource which they are trying to locate, it will be replying back, or kind of query hit message will be sending back. Otherwise, it will forward further. Okay. So, whenever a query is coming, it is forwarded to the neighboring supernodes until a match is found. It will keep on doing it, just like what is happening in the Gnutella network. So, this query flooding exists, but with a limited scope. But if you are looking at the pure Gnutella, okay, there is no distinction like a supernode or a peer. The flooding is happening among all the machines. Okay, but here it is happening with a limited scope. That means among supernodes only that query flooding is happening. As each supernode has many child peers, so they are grouping the child under them. Okay. Then CASA. It's a typical P2P architecture, and in this CASA, the technology is such an example which makes use of Napster and Gnutella both. So CASA technology is making use of both. Thus, the individual group leaders along with their child peers form a Napster-like structure. Napster is an example for that centralized directory server architecture, the first architecture we discussed. So similar to that architecture, the group leaders and the child peers connected to them form an Napster-like structure. And these group leaders then interact among themselves, that is our supernodes interact among themselves to resemble like a Gnutella-like structure. So it's a mix of both, both the technique we discussed so far. So hence such a system exploits the heterogeneity of the peers by designating some of them as group leaders or supernodes and others as their child peers. So that is why this name, exploiting heterogeneity. So that about the three architectures that is followed in a typical P2P network. Now let's see an overview about the routing and the resource discovery in a typical P2P network. So peer-to-peer networks generally implement some form of virtual overlay network. I already told you that graph-like structure that you can assume in a typical P2P network is what we call as the overlay network, and it is a virtual one because we are not doing it in a physical manner. Okay. The underlying physical topology exists, and on top of that physical topology we have a virtual overlay network on top of the physical network topology, where the nodes in the overlay form a subsets of the nodes in the physical network. So in the physical network there will be a number of machines connected, but when you are looking at a typical P2P network, there will be a subset of machines that will be forming the overlay network. Now the data is still exchanged directly over the underlying TCP IP network only, but at the application layer the peers are able to communicate with each other directly via the logical or the virtual overlay links. So each of which corresponds to a path between the underlying physical network. If two machines are connected virtually, that actual communication is through the physical link between them only, or the physical path between them only. But virtually you can think of a virtual link or logical link between them. That makes an overlay structure. And the overlays are used for indexing and peer discovery. Whenever you want to discover a resource, you are trying to discover the peer which is having the resource, okay, and indexing that particular machine. For that purpose, we are depending this overlay structure and make the P2P system independent of the physical network topology. So based on how the nodes are linked to each other within the overlay network and how the resources are indexed and located, we can classify the networks as unstructured and structured P2P. So that is another classification by looking at the overlay structure, whether we are following a strictly structured overlay or it is unstructured, or it could be a hybrid between the two. So accordingly, the first one, that is unstructured P2P network, the word itself says that there is no typical structure followed by it. The unstructured P2P networks do not impose a particular structure on the overlay network by design, but rather are formed by the nodes that are randomly form connections to each other. There is no typical structure for the overlay. Instead, it's randomly getting connected. Nutella, Gossip, Casa are typical examples of unstructured P2P protocols. Because there is no structure globally imposed upon them, unstructured networks are easy to build. Also, because the role of all peers in the network is the same, unstructured networks are highly robust in face of high rates of churn. So what do you mean by churn? That is when large number of peers are frequently joining and leaving network. So imagine a situation, many large number of peers are coming, joining as well as leaving the P2P, and that means there is a high rate of churn. And in such a situation, this network becomes stable because they are not following any structure. Randomly, anyone can join. Accordingly, virtual link will be established. When they are leaving, and that link will be disconnected. Okay, that's all. So it's kind of robust structure. The primary limitation of an unstructured network arises from its lack of structure. That itself is the disadvantage. Because when a peer wants to find a desired piece of data in the P2P network, the search query must be flooded, because here there is no other way, because as we don't know the underlying structure, we can't locate the information also. There is no prior information, means that structure itself is not giving you any hint regarding the resources. Instead, to locate a particular resource, the only way is you have to flood the information. Otherwise, you have to go with a centralized directory service, but that is having the limitations of a client server kind of communication, single point of failure, those things are there. So the best way is by query flooding. So definitely, what are the problems with the flooding? All of those limitations are applicable for unstructured P2P networks also. So the search query must be flooded through the network to find as many peers as possible that share the data. The flooding causes a very high amount of signaling traffic in the network, uses more CPU or memory by requiring every peer to process each search queries, because when the data is getting flooded, everybody is checking whether it is available within it locally or not. So CPU power as well as memory is utilized, right? So, and does not ensure that the search query will always be resolved, because it keep on doing flooding, and in worst case it may not find the resource also, and there is no guarantee, and we can't predict anything prior. And furthermore, since there is no correlation between a peer and the content managed by it, so by looking at a peer, you can't see what are the contents within it, unless there is a centralized directory, but that is not a good artisan, we already see. So if you are looking at a pure query flooding based unstructured network, there is no correlation between the peer and the information which it is carrying, and there is no guarantee that the flooding will find a peer that has the desired data. So we don't know, we will keep on flooding, and finally we may reach a failure. So popular content is likely to be available at several peers, and any peer searching for it is likely to find the same thing. If the content is popular, definitely it will be replicated at means, or its copy will be available in more than one peer, and definitely search will be a success, and that will end up fast also. But if a peer is looking for a rare data shared by only few other peers, then it is highly unlikely that the search will be successful, because some of them may be having it, but that machine may go on offline, or there may be a failure for that. So such worst case scenario may occur, and accordingly your search may be failure also. So when it comes to structured network, in structured P2P networks, the overlay is organized into a specific topology, and the protocol ensure that any node can efficiently search the network for a file or resources, even if the resource is extremely rare. So there is an efficient searching technique. That means some way you can locate the resource in an efficient manner, even though the resource is extremely rare, or at least you will find that the resource is not available in a faster manner, and because that query flooding is not here, but instead we are locating the resource in some using some different technology. And on such approaches, the most common type of structured P2P network implements a distributed hash table to assign ownership of files to the particular peer. So now we are using some hashing function, we are associating the file or the resources with available in a given machine to that, maybe its IP address, something like that. You know what is hashing technique, and here we are using something called a distributed hashing technique. And for the time being, I am mentioning this concept only, but we will see how this is organized and how it is different from a normal traditional hashing technique when we are doing the case study. During that case study, we will see this topic in detail. Okay, for the time being, using such a distributed hash table mechanism, you can implement a typical structured P2P networks, and this enables the peers to search for resources on the network using a hash table, definitely. And that is that key valued pair, and you know what is key valued pair in a hash structure, are stored in the distributed hash table, and any participating node can efficiently retrieve the value associated with the given key with the help of this technique, and that makes the searching efficient, much efficient compared to a pure unstructured P2P network. Anyway, we will see the underlying technology in detail when we are discussing the case study. So with this, I am winding up this part of the presentation, and later on the subsequent parts we will see two case study, particularly the Gnutella and BitTorrent, okay, and how they are working. Thank you.